Hi there. We have a very different episode for you this time. Fallon and I have a guest, and all three of us have agreed that it's best to have his video feed off out of respect for the deceased, who we will talk about, and for her family's privacy, among other things. Now, of course, we can see Dave, but I think as you listen to the conversation, you'll understand why we turned off his video, even though our guest is fully POMO, physically out, mentally out. It's our hope that you find this unique and successful story to be useful for your exit from Jehovah's Witnesses. It deals with serious loss and it also inspiring positive outcomes. Anyway, here we go.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Difficult Childhood. My name is Fallon, and I'm joined by my regular co-host and childhood best friend, Jason. We discuss what it's like growing up inside of the Jehovah's Witness organization, but also what it's like separating yourself from that as an adult and the amazing life that's waiting for you out there if you choose to make that transition. And today we are joined by a friend and a guest. His name is Dave. He is a viewer of ours, and he reached out to us after watching one of our videos, and we had a wonderful conversation. And he just felt just struck by some of the things that we had discussed. So we invited him or made arrangements for him to join us here and just share his experience because outside opinions or outside stories are what kind of make up the fabric of this experience. So we are really excited to have him here with us.
Yeah, welcome,
Hi,
Dave.
Dave.
Hello. Good evening. How are you?
We're doing good. We're doing good. So I wanted to ask you, what was there something specific in that episode that like stood out to you, or was it just the overall theme? I think the episode was we were discussing things you would do differently with your exit process, or if you knew then what you know now, what would you tell yourself from the past?
Yeah.
So was it something specific that spoke to you, or what made you decide to reach out to it?
Well, specifically what got me emotional. I'm trying to think now because I did actually caught me, and I had to take a breath for a minute, and actually pause it because it was first of all, I love that I wasn't the only person who grew up with a female best friend. So uh, I had a really close friend of mine who was a girl who was also a Jehovah's Witness. So you can imagine how kind of weird that was. Um,
Sure.
it was one of those things where you didn't tell very many people because everybody assumes everything. And it was never any kind of guy girl relationship. It wasn't like that. We were literally just friends. I had her brother was actually my friend, and we, you know, were pretty close friends for a while, and then kind of happened kind of weird where he kind of drifted away and had other interests that I didn't follow and I wasn't really into. Whereas I found I could talk to her, and she was she's a very good person to help you reason things through. She had a very soothing way about her, and I realized that I didn't know anybody else in the world that I got along better with than her. But we were never we were never a romantic thing in any way. Never even
Right.
thought. Well, okay, when I was very young, yes, but that was different. but as we grew older, we realized we were just really good friends, and we talked all the time up until she got married and I got married, and we kind of drifted apart for a little while, and then started talking again afterward when the whole internet became a little more widely available to everybody. And then texting and everything which was around again, and just all everything, make everything clear here. My wife was completely aware of all this, and she was completely fine with this. She knew we were never a thing in any way, and
Right.
but we were really good friends, and we talked all the time. She got married, she had kids, and we both had our separate lives, but we would still catch up and talk, and um, just we were always two people that could talk to each other if we needed somebody to talk to. Not that I couldn't talk to my wife because I love her so much, and she's my rock. She is my um, she's the best. She really is.
Yeah.
And uh, thank goodness I have her, and she left with me, left witnesses as well, and for good reason. Uh, but we can get into that in a
Yeah, that's
bit.
just amazing. That never happens. Like that it happens
Yeah,
among the so-called worldly people, but it's just it never happened. Very rarely happens in the organization because, like you said, it's always implied that, oh, this couldn't possibly just be a platonic friendship.
yeah,
It's
Right.
even going out in service with just a female in the congregation that you're not married to, as a
hmm,
male, that would be oh my God, how horrific, how shocking. And
right,
it's a strange thing, and it kind of prevents people from building really meaningful friendships, just because you happen to be of the opposite sex.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, even for us, even from our parents, and our parents knew Jason and I never dated
hmm,
or anything like that. But we've been friends since the '80s, so even before texting was a thing, we would just email back and forth. We were on opposite ends of the country, and I mean, I definitely got words of caution, like, "Oh, be
yeah,
careful if you email each other too often, people might talk."
oh yeah, yeah.
That's always
We
the first concern. People
Things
might
might be
talk. Yeah.
misinterpreted.
yeah, we're still going to talk anyway, no matter what, right? It's like
Mhm.
That's
gossip
exactly
culture. That
right.
was it's the worst. Um, and we were always worried that people would start talking because when we were like in our 20s, we would just like go bowling, just the two of us, and then nobody thought much about it. I didn't think much about her family. Didn't care. She had a pretty big family, so they had trouble tracking where everybody was anyway. But we would we'd hang out all the time, just do stuff together. Sometimes it was with a couple of her brothers and sisters, and but there were times when we were worried people would start implying things or assuming things, and it never happened though. Never happened. But when we got older, we figured it's better to not really advertise that we're talking because how quick the watchtower is to disfellowship people for things they didn't do. Um, you know.
Sure.
Um,
And the
but anyway,
gossiping is the Jehovah's Witness favorite activity, even though they supposedly don't do it.
yeah, exactly. Right,
Brutal.
right. So, but when we got into into our adulthood, and we're married with kids, we weren't really meeting in person very much. There was a more of a once in a great while seeing each other kind of thing. But then eventually she, I'm getting ahead of myself. Probably I should probably go back a bit and maybe tell people first of all who I am. I
Yeah.
should.
Well, how did that's a really good point. How you take us back to the beginning? Were you raised in the truth, or were you how'd all that go?
So I was born as into a Jehovah's Witness family, and it was I wouldn't say it was I have one brother older than me, and I wouldn't say we had an unhappy childhood. I mean, I honestly, my parents did pretty good considering the restrictions that you have around being a witness, of letting us have, you know, not wide open freedom to do whatever we wanted to, but we were, we were a family that did all sorts of family trips, and we had a lot of friends over. My dad was still is he's a very social guy, so he always had people over the house. So we always had even if we didn't have kids from our congregation, we always had kids from neighboring congregations who would come over with their parents. My dad was always the first one to offer, what was it? I forget what the word was for when you hosted the speaker. What was it called? Um,
Hospitality.
Hospitality, right? They were always the one to somehow get hospitality, and we'd have like the speaker over. And if he had kids, they'd be over there at our house. And so I met a lot of kids I only met once. Came there, visited us, and never came back. But we had chances to have friends all around because of that. Because him being Mister, has to know everybody. He was a very social guy. So you know, built a very big circle of friends over the years. So I never had a shortage of friends. That didn't stop the awkwardness in school because that's nothing you can do about that. Um, my elementary school, I had no other witnesses in my school, so I was always the one kid sitting in the hallway during everybody had the cupcakes and Valentine's Day. Um, so when I got older, there were kids that were in my high school that were witness. I guess you call witnesses in name. Like the ones who would be all good at home,
Yeah.
then you go to school and they were something else. Saying that they're witnesses and doing all sorts of things that I couldn't do because I was always the good guy, not wanting to get in trouble. Um,
That's kind of my
and
question. Were you mentally fully in as a teenager? That you were, if you were given 100% to 80%, how much did you believe that it was the truth and that Jehovah was real and all that stuff?
oh, totally, oh, completely, yeah. I was completely in. I was baptized when I was 17. Um, and I yeah, totally believed it. I was so much of a believer in the whole thing that when, and I bet you the other people had this. If not, this is gonna sound weird, but like when we would have like a thunderstorm outside, I would think, is this the end? Is it gonna come? Am I gonna die now? Did I do everything right? I would always have these nightmares about being murdered from above. I mean, I had those all the way through my childhood, and I thought that was normal. I didn't think that was, I thought I was supposed to feel guilty just for being me. Um,
Just for existing.
yeah, just for for existing. I was sure I was going to smite it from the sky at some point for doing whatever I did wrong. Um, and no, I was totally believing everything up until to my late 20s, I think. Yeah, probably like my late 20s. Things started to go a little strange then.
Do you know what
So
started? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Phil.
I was just going to say, when the time came, was it like a little crack in your thinking where you started to maybe second guess, or was it like, boom, the blinders are off
I'm trying.
and you had a light bulb moment? Was it
Yeah.
gradual or was it real sudden?
No, it was okay. So the crack that happened was pretty big to me, but I didn't know what was going on. It was so I was appointed as servant, and I was the literature servant for 7 years, and I was the guy who would come before meetings and check all the boxes of stuff in and count it all and put. I don't know if anybody realized how much work that was, but that was awful.
Yeah,
It
I
was
did that one. That was rough.
Yeah. So you're there sometimes after people have been gone for like hours on a Sunday, and you making sure everything's counted and double counted, and your report's all set. And I did that for a long time. And then after I was married for a while, my wife and I decided to move to a congregation that was closer to us, and we thought it would save us gas, and I was supposed to be going to that one anyway. So decided to move there, and I was there for I think maybe like 2 or 3 weeks, and Elder pulled me in the back and he said, I understand that you were a servant in your previous congregation. I said, yeah, and he just said, well, I can't appoint you as a servant here because your hours are not haven't been sufficient for the past few months. And I'm thinking to myself right then. I said, wait a minute. So I worked my butt off for 7 years doing literature, getting the hours that I could get in when I could get them in, and it didn't. None of that mattered because my a number of hours was below the national average for a month or two, and it was like, really. And the thing that popped in my head was, I'm a number. I'm just a number. That's all that matters is a number, not me. Now what I did, now how much I care, now how much I dedicate my time
Yeah.
to all this. I'm just a number. And that was the first thing that made me question what's going on here. It's kind of weird. Why would it matter what my number was to appoint me as a servant? I mean, and the funny thing is this congregation I moved to, I had been in when I was really young. I was moving back to it, so the people there knew me. Everybody knew me, and they knew my character, and that I was a good person, basically. And so I was really weird. Like, why would you need to count my hours to know that? And so, anyways, it just that was the first thing that happened to me that made me wonder what's going on here. But I didn't put pieces together at that point. I knew something was weird, but I didn't know what it was.
Yeah, that's like dehumanizing.
It was. It was. It it was my first clue that something out of the ordinary was happening, or no, that I was in something that wasn't what I thought it was. I guess that's the best way to phrase it.
Okay. Yeah, that stinks.
Yeah.
Especially when It just seems like they would take into consideration that, number one, you're supposed to be in that congregation anyway, and even the process of moving itself could throw your hours off
Mm-hmm.
for a few months. You know what I mean? Like, just that, like such a big life change, life event that could easily skew hours anyway.
Right.
So
Right.
it's terrible.
Absolutely. And it strikes me that being a ministerial servant, a pioneer, an elder, all these things are supposed to be what they call spirit anointed positions. So when you're transferred to the new congregation, they you get a letter of recommendation to be a ministerial servant again, and then they pray on it. They're supposed to pray over that and then reappoint you. And the fact that you can be emotionally all invested, spiritually all in there, but you had a circumstance like Valence moving and your hours went down, that the fact that you can be that invested and still not be appointed as a ministerial servant when you get to the next congregation, to me just speaks, okay, it's not a
Right.
spirit thing. This is
Right.
just a bunch
There's
of
no
guys
continuity
looking
to
at your
it.
Yeah.
numbers.
Yeah. It's it 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 only occurred to me years later, the whole structure of it, where you have, basically publishers, salespeople, elders, managers. Then you got the district overseer, district manager. Then you got, the it's a company structure, and never
It's a pyramid scheme.
right, never thought about it, and it was all one big door-to-door book sales company.
Oh,
That never occurred to me, but when it did finally, oh man,
I don't
yeah.
know why it never occurred to me. I've never thought of that either, Dave. You just blew
Oh,
the back off
when
my
I
head.
the,
That's
the
crazy.
day I
You're
realized
right.
that, my whole head just like, what? Wait a minute. So anyway, it's like,
How do you think overall you responded to
That's
that? I mean,
crazy.
did you get bitter right away, or did you just kind of take it in stride?
do you mean the what I was mentioning about realizing I was a number, that thing, or
Right. Right.
no? It just made me question. I remember scratching my head trying to figure out what just happened when he told me that. Like what? And then
Right. Confusing.
yeah, kind of confusion. Then I wanted to say, well, maybe I just got to do better, and I tried. I was never reappointed as a servant. I was fine with that. In fact, my wife was fine with that. She goes, "You probably have less stress." So, when she was right, they, in fact, um, over the years before that, in the hall that I had left, they kept trying to kind of coax me into becoming an elder. And I had one elder come to me and saying, have you ever thought of taking on more not responsibilities, but the privileges? Yeah, privileges. And evidently, what he was doing is he was trying to groom me as an elder, and I didn't want that. And my wife's like, no, you're not doing that. She goes, I don't think you would want that much stress. And I said, you know what, you're probably right. And I'm glad I didn't, because who knows where I'd be today? I don't know. So many elders are, I think, guilted into staying because they feel so much responsibility for what they think they have to do, and probably for
Right.
fear of their family falling apart. Um, but so yeah, we're going off track there. What were we talking about again? I completely lost track. Yeah. Oh, okay.
That's the way a good conversation goes.
So no, at the time I didn't think about it too much. It wasn't until about 15 years later that the next domino fell. That made me really, really question what was I part of.
Right.
And that
And what
this
year
would
was this
be
second
around
domino?
2014. So
Okay.
I mentioned a friend of mine, my close friend. She So, well, I guess we talked about this. I think I'll just leave her name out completely, just for her family
Oh, sure.
privacy. Um, but we had known each other since childhood, since elementary school. We kept in touch over the years. Very few people knew we talked, especially after both of us were married and older. And so, we didn't advertise that we were in touch, especially after she was disfellowshipped. And again, my wife was perfectly fine with us talking; never had an issue with that. And But she was my sounding board, this friend of mine, for so many years, and she saved my sanity. I mean, literally, at one point. Helped me when I was at my lowest point. I had some severe depression at one point, and called her my low budget therapist. um, but so she was disfellowshipped in the mid 2010s, but she wanted to be reinstated. She planned on that. She was still very much, I guess, what we call a POMI, physically out, mentally in. She was disfellowshipped, but she planned on going back. So over the years, she reached out to her family repeatedly, over and over, and was shut down by her dad whenever she tried to get in touch with him. And he was adamant he would not talk to her while she was disfellowshipped. And now I just want to say I want to stress I love her dad. He's a truly good person, and I understand why he did what he did. He was following what he thought he had to do,
Yeah.
and exactly, yeah, under the programming, he
Yeah.
still is,
Programming. I
and
mean,
I'm sure he still thinks it's the truth. Okay, he's a good man. I love their whole family like they were my own, and so I understand her mother still had some limited interactions with her for the sake of because they're grandchildren. So um, her mom still talked to her here and there because of that. But the shunning was absolutely killing her. It was crushing her. Um, she was a very social person, and the shunning just did a number on her. And I've always thought that this fellowshipping practice was cruel. I never believed in the shunning. I understand that for those that are Christian, and I still am Christian, not a witness at all, but I understand that there's a precedent in the Bible for disfellowshipping, but not shunning and treating somebody as dead. That is totally foreign. And her family and her friends
right.
pushed her away
Right.
and shunned her, and she drifted more and more into just negativity, and she got in a number of bad relationships one after another, trying to find someone to make her happy. And she finally found a guy, really nice guy. Again, this is around to backtrack. Just again, this is the mid 2010s. She finally found a guy, a really nice guy with a good job in technology. They clicked. I mean, they had what you'd call chemistry. They were really good together. Good guy, and hey, how about that? He's a nice worldly guy.
Hmm.
That they exist apparently. um, but anyway, so she planned on marrying him and returning to the JWs, and he was a man. Just catch my breath for a minute. So he was really good to her. He just was just a nice guy. Um, I can't say at all for her ex-husband. He was like a complete opposite of her ex-husband. But anyway, I won't go there. Um, but her new guy honestly showed her something that she'd never really seen, I think, and that was real, genuine love. They were in love. They were. And come 2014, her boyfriend decides that he's going to take her out. So I always say sport riding, okay? And I won't go into the details of what that is, but they were going on an outdoor expedition riding a motor vehicle. Yeah, off-roading, yep.
Just doing
And
some off-roading type stuff, huh?
now she'd always been she was very athletic anyway. She loved doing outdoor activities, hiking and I don't know, mountain climbing, but but hiking, skiing, all that stuff. But this was new for her. She'd never been on any kind of motorized vehicle before. And so on her second lesson out, her boyfriend and her were riding, and she hit the accelerator instead of the brake, and she's jammed off the road at who knows what speed, straight into a tree, solid oak tree. And yeah,
Oh,
uh, she had multiple breaks, fractures, massive spinal injuries. She was left as a quadriplegic with massive brain trauma. Um, so
oh my.
sorry, this is so anyway, so as soon as I found out, I went up there. She was in a hospital in New York State, and I got there, and I ran into her brother, who I hadn't seen in a long time. Great guy. He's like a brother to me. Um, but I go in to see her, and it was just awful. She was a mess. She couldn't talk. She was on a breathing tube and a metal cage just to hold her skull and her spine together because she was that bad. Everything was just, she was shattered, you know. And after spending some time in the room with her, you know, I was melting from the sheer sadness of the shape she was in. And I walked out, and I just needed a break. I walked out
Oh,
to the waiting room, and and her boyfriend was sitting there, and we started talking. And after a while, um, he says to me, "So hey, you're a Jehovah's Witness too?" I said, "Yeah. Why?" So I got a thought that just keeps going through my head. It's bothering me. And I'm thinking, where's he going with this? He said, "No, no, understand. I'm an atheist, so this religion business is all foreign to me. I grew up an atheist. My parents are atheists, so you know, so I know she's been disfellowshipped, and none of her old friends will talk to her." And he goes, "Jehovah's Witness is a Christian, right?" And I said, "Right." He goes, "So isn't Christianity supposed to be about love and compassion?" And I said, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, it is." You know, so thinking, I'm thinking, what am I getting myself into with this conversation? And he said, "She was always telling me how much it hurt to be shunned, and disfellowshipping doesn't seem to fit with the idea of love to me." And I tried my best to defend what I believed at the time, but I realized as I said it, I didn't even believe the words coming out of my own mouth. You know, he was right. He was right. It was cruel. It was cruel. And you know, I never believed in the
Yeah.
practice to begin with, but it wasn't until that moment that I realized how cruel it was. It wasn't any different than bullying kids in school, you know? You know, like you sit at a table with a bunch of kids in a school and one kid who nobody else to talk to is sitting there and nobody talks to him. You leave him out of the conversation because you just want to be mean and leave this kid out that nobody likes, you know, the awkward kid. It felt like bullying in a school. I mean, that's what, yeah. I
Like
mean,
to teach them a lesson.
it just felt like bullying by omission was not any different than shunning people. It's, it's just not, it's not right. And when you know, stepping back from it now, I can, I can see how wrong it is. Even though at the time I never agreed with it, never liked it. I never realized how awful it really is. And this opened my eyes to it. And now I just find the whole thing just evil. No other word for it. So anyway, some of
Yeah.
her family eventually came in to see her in the hospital. I wasn't there at the time, but some of them came in to see her at the time after I left, while she was still in the hospital. But all those friends, you know, quote friends, as we call them in the organization, you know, nobody showed up, and at least not that I ever saw. I used to check the when you go to the facility where she ended up going to, they have a sign-in book, and you can see who's been there for the day. I used to kind of scan back there to see who'd been there, and nope, it was next to nobody came to see her, and that bothered me a lot because she was just honestly one of the kindest people I've ever known. Just a really good human being, you know, and for her to be shunned because someone in upstate New York pieced together some Bible verses and said so. You know, there's some people who need interaction, who need to have people around
yeah.
them. She was one of those. You know, she was a self-admitted social butterfly. That's what she called herself. And you know, to be cut off, it was just, it just really bothered me. It was everything from you know, sadness to anger that I went through in those you know few weeks while she was up there. Um, Something in me snapped, and I came to see the shunning policy for what it was, and then the organization for what it was. But you know, just a company run by a bunch of cruel policy making men. That wasn't even the end, though. Still, that didn't end things for me. I don't know if you want me to go on.
That you're saying that didn't convince you that it's not
No, I mean I
a
knew
valid or
that
the
part of it
truth.
was
Then
completely wrong and needed to change, but it didn't at that point. It didn't occur to me completely that this was something I had to get away from. You want me to go on?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's always the notion of that gets it when you don't agree with a policy of the organization. Well, if it's not right, really, then
Right.
we have to wait
Yeah.
on Jehovah. They always say,
Oh yeah.
and he'll fix it eventually. And we apparently have to wait on Jehovah to stop shunning someone who's broken in a hospital bed and can't even speak. I would
Yeah.
imagine. Was that the
Well, at
case?
first she couldn't speak at all. And when she finally eventually spoke, um, it was very, um, she had to put a lot of effort into speaking. It's very, I mean, she had severe brain damage. So she never talked completely like herself ever again.
Yes.
She could communicate very, very basically. She remembered me. In fact, I remember walking into the room and her saying my name over and over again when I first saw her. And that was pretty emotional, you know, but to know that she was still in there, and she was, that was the worst part about it, is the fact that she was, you know, quadriplegic and still in there and couldn't be herself. And just, you know, that was awful. But so she lived through, you know, that pretty awful recovery time, but she never completely recovered. She actually, she died a little over 3 years later. Um, and, you know, I don't want to go into specifics about what happened in her final years, but it wasn't much of a life. It really wasn't. Um, but you know, her shunning and her boyfriend's honest outsider's opinion is what really got me thinking. Um, that was my second domino. The final one, I bet a whole bunch of people listening are going to say, "Oh yeah, me too." That's the Australian Royal Commission. Um, I stumbled across um,
Yeah.
a recording of the television broadcast and the proceedings going on, and it was in particular for me. For me, it was the words of Jeffrey Jackson when he asked if there's a problem with child abuse within uh, the witnesses, and he said it would appear that that is the case. Yes, it's like, well, how come I never knew about this then? And then, you know, like why is that
Right.
not on the you know, the website's news section, and should be all over it. And then of course, you know, I read through the whole report. I got a printed copy of the report and couldn't believe what I was reading. And you know, out of 1,000, was it there were 1,000 children that were abused, and not a single person was ever reported to the police. You know, not one. Um, you know, and here I
Yeah.
am. I'm a
Right.
dad myself with a child, and I'm, I can't be part of this anymore. I can't. I can't. This this is a filthy organization. It's a filthy.
It's
It is
sickening. I mean, when I first read those statistics, even if you just follow the law of averages, not one single 1,000 cases over
right.
50 years and zero. So, I mean, there's just no way to justify it.
I guess it wouldn't be even as bad if it wasn't for the fact that for years we're always, you know, that term Jehovah's clean organization. You remember hearing that one? Okay, you know, it's clean, really clean. I'll call this clean.
Stop us.
I'll call that clean. If it was, you know, and not only that, but it wasn't even the fact that this happened. It was, to me, it was okay. This has happened, but why hasn't anybody admitted it before this? Because, you know, even like the Catholic Church has admitted it. Sure, it took them court cases to get them to admit it,
Right.
but they admitted it finally. Does that make them better? I don't know, but at least they've done something, you know. Whereas these guys not only haven't done anything, they want to bury it over and over and over again, and that to me, that was a clincher right there. That was not just disgusting; it was dishonest, and I had to back away. And fortunately, you know, I went to my went to my wife and we talked a little bit, and she agreed. She agreed after, you know, learning what was really going on, because she had some ideas, I think, of what might have been happening herself. Um, because there were other cases over the years that had been on the news, you know, um, and you know, she agreed with me that this was not where we wanted to be. So we just stopped cold turkey. I think 2014 convention was the last one we went to. And that was the first one they had the
Really
giant
interesting.
LED screens. I even thought that was weird. That was the first one they had the LED screens at. I'm like, what is this all about? This is really kind of weird.
Yeah, wasn't that just the year after the release of the New World Translation when they did that Apple styled, product release
Yeah,
annual
yeah,
meeting?
it was. Yeah, 2013 was the gray Bible, and that 2014 was that was the first year I saw the giant LED screens at the convention. I don't know if there was one the year before or not. I don't think so. I think that was the first year. But yeah, you're right though.
Interesting.
So
That's amazing that you and your wife left together. That is so rare.
Yeah.
yeah, no, and I know I've heard terrible stories of breakups and marriages that have happened because of one person,
Did you
you know, leaving.
did you have a fear? I mean, did you internally think, oh, what if I bring this to her and she says, get out? Or, were you at any point afraid? Like,
Yeah, it went through my head a little bit, but thing is, we know each other so well, I can almost predict what she's going to say to certain things. Um, we are a couple that finish each other's sentences, so we're like that. So I had a pretty good idea of how she was going to respond. I was still a little bit worried, and mainly because my family's still in, her family's like really still in. So
yeah.
I thought that would be the problem right there, but no, her logic overcame everything, and she was very much like, well, let's look at what's going on. What are the facts here? Let's see if we can figure out if this is really, is this for real, or is this, And so after talking for a while, um, we decided just to stop going to the meetings and do some reading on what's real. And I remember, oh my god, my wife must have thought I was insane. The first week that we stopped going to meetings, I decided to dig in for real on what the history of the society was. And I remember finding there's an archive online of all the old publications before 1950, And I remember downloading like 40 different watchtowers from like way back, and I was literally up for 24 hours reading. And my wife came down at like 3 o'clock in the morning. She's like, "You okay?" I'm like, I can't stop reading. I can't believe what I'm reading here." And I started putting together the pieces of stuff that had changed over the years and why they were the way that they were.
What
And
were some of the ones that popped out at you that were really like, oh my goodness,
uh,
how did they believe this ever?
the stuff from Rutherford, that man was insane.
Yeah,
Um,
it's
the man
unhinged.
was. It wasn't just his writing. First of all, his writing style was completely bizarre. If anybody who's ever looked at his stuff, you'll know what I'm saying here. He used the word heretofore all the time, heretofore, and it was I guess because he was a lawyer. He must have used that in his legal writing. I don't know, but you could tell the articles he wrote versus others, because it was funny because some of the articles he'd write things in a watchtower, and then the next article would completely contradict what he just said. I saw that a couple of times. Like he'd say something, and somebody else would write an article that didn't agree with him. It's very weird. But what struck me the most about his writing was how um, he was he clearly thought he knew everything. His pompousness came out in the way that he wrote. Um, Very arrogant man. You could tell just by what he wrote. And what occurred to me most by reading off his writings is this. And I hope I can put this into the right words. So we know the society right now is a very legalistic, law-filled, policy-filled organization where it's always we're going to get you if you don't do what we're telling you to do. Um,
Right.
this man started that. And if you read his writings, you can tell that somehow between then and now, he has immortalized himself in the rules of the Watchtower Society. His pompousness, arrogance, and legalistic tendencies have somehow filtered down through the years, and we still have them. He's the one
And
who
don't even know,
started.
and don't even know it.
No,
Don't
we
even
don't even
know
know.
that
No,
that's where it came from.
exactly. He's the one who started this very evil way of treating people. You can tell that he had no care for people, and
That's a
he
completely new thought to me. I've never thought about. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
I don't think anybody it would ever occur to anyone unless you read his writings and you realize this man liked to control people's lives. He was the one who started this. Because if you think about it, before that, people could say what they want about Russell, but that wasn't his style. He was more like, use your conscience, do what you think you should do. Rutherford was not that way. He was very much, here's what you're going to do, and I'm going to set things straight the way I want them to. And then I started digging into accounts of how he treated people at Bethel. And there's one in particular that you may have heard of, and I thought it was pretty funny. So you probably heard about how Rutherford got kicked out of Bethel. He got kicked out of Bethel, I think was in, I want to say maybe around 1910, 1912. He got kicked out. And I don't recall what the reason was. I don't remember if it was for I think it was for behavior. He was not treating people well. Russell saw this. He sent him back to California. Said you're gonna have to leave. And in 1916, right? Russell dies, and there's an account of Rutherford having one of his cronies at the Watchtower call him out in California and tell him the old man's dead. Come on back. And he came back fully intent on doing what he was going to do. And of course, we know what he did. He did his hostile takeover of the Watchtower Society. And that was his way of kind of getting back at Russell, because he did not like Russell. Rutherford and Russell, in the end, I don't know what Russell felt, but I know Rutherford definitely had hate. He was a very hateful man in a lot of ways, but he somehow came to despise Russell. And I think it was because Russell kicked him out. And sent him on his way. But when he died, he came back full force and did what he did, and he took his really controlling ways with him when he came back to the Watchtower Society. So that's the thing that I realized when I sat there for like literally 24 hours, and on the rest of the week I kept reading and reading and reading and watching videos. There's a few recorded accounts of from the Bible students of that day talking about his behavior, and it's just a horrible man. Rutherford was just a horrible person.
So,
So
and
many
we're
ways.
You
supposed to
think
think.
of what?
Sorry, go ahead, Fallon.
Go ahead. I was just gonna say, you think of like what lengths you went to find that material. The average Joe Blow, rank and file, JW. I mean, they're not going to just stumble across that information.
Right. No. And I think it's absolutely the reason why they don't put the old publications online, especially
Oh, sure.
if you want to read a complete insanity trip sometime. Read volume 7 of Studies in the Scriptures. It is
Really?
written. I swear it's written on LSD. There's some things in that book that is not only ridiculous, makes no sense whatsoever. There's a point in the book where, excuse me, he just makes some really outlandish statements. I won't even go into what they are, but it's a really bizarre book. It was because you probably know this, and if you don't, I'll fill you in really quickly. Russell wrote Studies in the Scriptures, book 1 through 6. He was planning on writing book 7, but of course he died, and so Rutherford figured, well, I can probably get some people to go along with me if I get a book 7 put together. So he scrapped together some of Russell's old material, put together some of his own. And he had one of his writers on staff there. I don't remember his name now. Fill in the rest of the material to make a full book. But what some of the stuff that was written in the book is completely insane. I mean, not just weird theory stuff. I'm talking as in written like as if somebody's on some kind of mind altering drug. It like makes no sense at all. Trying to remember what one of them was. One of them had to do with determining world events based on the distance between two train stations. I think it was. It was just really just weird stuff.
What?
Yeah, if you dig into the book 7, you'll see what I mean. It's been a while since I read it, so I can't remember all the details. But I do remember thinking this is garbage. No wonder they talk about book 7 being so pivotal, but nobody's ever read it. They don't want you to read it. They would not want you to read this stuff because you'd realize the guy who was behind a lot of your beliefs was a little bit off the deep end.
And then
It's
you're
one thing.
supposed to expect that this is God's, because they always talk about how God or Jesus came back and went, all right, who's handling my stuff right? Who's
Yeah,
really the faithful, discreet slave that I selected? All right. Oh, look at these guys; they're nailing it. And then meanwhile, they're coming up with, millions now living will never die, ridiculous predictions that aren't going to happen, and then this more just banana stuff. And I know
right.
he got really into the pyramids and all kinds of other stuff that had nothing to
Yeah.
do with anything.
Yeah, there were a number of things that kind of popped off the page to me that made me really just confused as anything because that I never knew any of this. So there was that. That was my Watchtower Odyssey.
That's
um,
super
Yeah, it's
interesting.
it's almost like quicksand. Like the more you fight it, the more you fight the information, the quicker it swallows you up.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know what I mean? Like it's like a vacuum. You go on, like you said, you were up for 24 hours reading. It's like a vacuum. Once you start opening your eyes, or once you start that waking up process, it's like you can't stop,
Right.
until you're
Yeah. It was
now.
very interesting. Very interesting.
When you said when you made the decision to stop attending meetings, and I heard you say earlier that you did have a child,
Yeah.
was your child old enough that you had to have like a conversation to explain, like, oh, we're not going to be attending anymore, or were they young enough that
He was young enough at the time that he knew we weren't going anymore, but he didn't. No, I think he was just kind of happy we weren't going. um, he,
sure,
he didn't.
I would have been thrilled.
Yeah, he was little enough that he didn't mind too much. I mean, he had some friends that were at the hall that was a little bit tough. He had some kids that he knew, and he didn't see them anymore, and to this day hasn't. So that was kind of hard, but he was okay with it for the most part. And yeah, I was worried about that at the beginning, but it did end up being an issue though.
Just a relief, because I mean, I remember the meetings when we were little, Fallon, and it just, that Sunday meeting felt like it was 9 hours long. You're 5 years
It
old.
was
It's just like,
Oh, I know. Yeah. Oh, definitely.
2.5 hours in dog years, so it
Yeah.
was 37 hours long in human
yeah,
years.
exactly.
Oh, goodness. Yeah. And if I moved, my mom was she was the under the seat pincher. She'd pinch you if you were making noise at the meeting. That was
Oh
that was, that
man.
was nice.
Mine started with the snapping of the fingers, and then it would be behind your arm, a little pinch there.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Slab. She get you.
Mm-hmm. What did your mom get there, Fallon?
Oh yeah, your knee, your arm, just very covert. Like she wouldn't reach over and backhand you. She'd give you the little,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
But
yeah.
for anything, not paying attention, couldn't stay awake. Looking at my friend across the Kingdom Hall too much, or not participating. You didn't raise your hand enough.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
you know.
We had this Kingdom Hall that was built like when I was little in like the 1940s. It was really old, and it had a bathroom that had paper thin walls. So after the meeting, you keep hearing
It's
smack smack, don't hit me, smack smack, don't hit me. You feel like the kids.
Oh,
It was awful. I remember it. And I was one of those kids too, so I'm sure they heard me. But I
like
remember.
you just accepted that back then. When, oh yeah, somebody's getting spanked. You just hear them being drugged back to the back of the Kingdom Hall to be beaten. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
insane,
it didn't even
criminal.
phase you. It's just
No.
part of it.
No, at the time it didn't phase me, but thinking back at it, I remember it vividly and thinking, why did that bother me? I guess I was so young it didn't mean much to me at the time. But and we got a new Kingdom Hall when I was older. I was in my teens. We built a new one and had nice thick walls. Couldn't hear that anymore.
Installation.
Yeah, it even had
What a thing.
a special children's room too. So sure was especially sound restricted.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Yep.
special they had
So,
a changing room that was used more, I think, more for changing kids' attitude than changing their diapers. I don't know.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Ours was the same way after
Yeah.
our remodel.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So after you made your, official decision,
Yeah.
to separate yourselves,
Yep.
um, what what would you say your biggest um change was that you noticed, like in yourself, or just in your routine or your mood, or you
Oh,
know what
um,
what do you think was a big turnaround for you?
for me, um, I I realized I was interested in learning everything. Learning things that I never was allowed to before. Um,
Yeah.
just simple stupid things like like I remember wanting to know what not that I'm into politics, but I wanted to know what they were because I didn't even know. Like how does an election work? Like how does I to this day I haven't registered to vote. Maybe will I? I don't know, but I wanted to know how it works because I had no idea coming into the world of all of that and not having any previous experience. The interesting thing about it is I came out with no biases, so I'm not going to say which way I decided on my opinions, but it was interesting to come out with a neutral, you know, opinion on things and realizing, oh, that guy's the idiot. How come they don't all know that? It's like why can't they see what I see? And that was really interesting. And then kind of learning what holidays are all about. I mean,
Sure.
Man, I remember setting up a Christmas tree for the first time. I'm like, how does this work? I'm thinking, I'm like in my 40s. I should know this by now. But I didn't. I didn't have any clue as to what I did first and what ornaments were all about. I remember going to a store that had a bunch of Christmas ornaments and just being fascinated by, oh, I can buy some of these. I'm not going to get in trouble for it. Well, maybe I am. I don't know. But I did.
You're looking over your shoulder like, oh, anybody they recognize back there?
Oh yeah, yeah. I totally expected Elder to jump out of the trees at one point and go, "You can't buy that." But it was an interesting period to go through of just experiencing things that I never had before, and
Yeah.
actually it improved my relationship with people that I knew, because so many people that I knew I never really got to know. I mean, I knew their name and I saw them every day, but I didn't get to know them because you're told everybody is all bad on the outside. Yeah, I mean, and then even like my relationship with my brother, it's been so much better since we've both been out.
Right.
Because when we were in, it was always like, oh man, I always had to be on my best behavior and being a perfect, witness. And it was, but when we both left, it was just, man, it was just, I, I can't describe it. It's been wonderful for us to know each other for real, as we really are, and know each other's interests and not be afraid of, we didn't both come to the same conclusion. We both came to different conclusions as to what we believe, but we're fine with that. And we've never had an issue at all arguing about, him trying to convince me of one thing or me trying to convince him of anything. And that's just been so awesome. Just being my own
Yeah.
person, and him being his own person and him actually enjoying his life. I'm so happy to see him actually enjoying his life now. And he is.
Right.
He wasn't before. I don't think he was at all while he was in. And
That's
just
fantastic.
I like how you phrased it about how you just wanted to learn everything and learn, what you were interested in, because I mean, I think about all the witnesses that I know.
Mhm.
Um, there are some that have like quote unquote hobbies, but overall, you're just always told that if you have disposable time,
Mhm.
your hobby should be advancing kingdom interests.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can't think really that I ever knew a witness that had like a serious hobby that like took a lot of their time,
Right.
uh,
Right. Yeah.
whether it was anything, bird watching, stamp collecting,
Yeah.
whatever activity, rollerblading. Because you're just always taught like, oh, if you have free time on the weekends, you should be in service. If you have free time after school or after work during the week, you should be studying, you should be, letter writing campaigns or whatever. You're not really allowed to um, cultivate many like secular interests
Mhm. Yeah.
until you're on the outside. And that's such a fun process. What am I interested in?
Yeah. It is.
Do I want to learn to speak Portuguese? Maybe.
Right. It was an interesting, thing to go through and try to figure out what I liked. Yeah. I'm sure others have had the same experience. It was wonderful. It was like nothing else I'd experienced in my life, that realization that things are not all confined anymore. I'm not stuck in a box, part of the Borg.
I think was the number one question I was asking was, what do I like?
Yeah.
I completely that resonates with me so much. What do I actually like?
Right.
And what am I like? And that's it's just a huge question. I mean, I remember, like you said, found with hobbies. There was a witness woman, so a sister, and she was a pioneer sister. Her husband was not JW, but we went over to their house for dinner, and he said, "Hey, you guys want to see my train?" This dude had his basement built out, and with his huge train set, and it just blew my mind. Not just because I was a kid and I thought it was neat, but I was like, adult people do this? Like, or do they have hobbies? What? It's nuts.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. I love it when people actually find what their passion is and they're actually, you know, doing that and sharing it and telling people about it and
Yeah.
enjoying their life. It's just a foreign thing for so many of us not really living your life, finding what you enjoy doing. It's not that you're going to do it all the time, but at least you have something to blow the steam off, not be always concentrating on
Mhm.
pleasing somebody else all the time. Um, when that goes away, it's just awesome.
Absolutely. It takes so much. I'm not congratulating myself here. I'm you. Especially if you have family, it takes so much courage to say, okay, I'm going to make these sacrifices and leave this religion because it's so hard to leave. And there's so many choices. Okay, are my kids going to have grandparents and all this other stuff that you got to think about?
Yeah.
It takes a lot of courage and conviction to do that. And I think a lot of people inside think it's a selfish and easy thing to leave. And in fact, it's difficult and requires a lot of selflessness, and I think that's awesome that you did it. And congrats, you made it out with your spouse and your family, and that's great.
No, I know how lucky I am in that way. I know that there's so many that didn't have that experience and lost everything, and I feel so bad for them. I mean, I can't imagine having your whole life fall apart because you wanted to be your true self. You wanted to be who you really were, and everything just melts on you. It's got to be a nightmare. Um, I, you know, I don't, I can't. It makes sense why so many people don't want to live anymore after they are,
Right.
you know, disfellowshipped or disassociated. They don't want to live anymore because they've lost everything and they lose, the will. Because losing your family is a very, I mean, it's for some people it is their life. You can't separate the two. I guess I probably should emphasize that I didn't immediately say, hey, you know what, talk to my wife and say, you know what, we're just leaving tomorrow. We're not going to be part. It wasn't immediate. It wasn't like the next day. It was we stopped going to meetings, and it was a few months of indecision as to what we're going to do, who we're going to tell, are we going to tell anybody, and we decided not to tell anyone at all until my parents called and asked, how was the you know how's the memorial, how many people were there. That's like, what do you say? um, it wasn't
Right.
at that point that really I thought about, well, I got to have some answers for people when they ask me, or if I run into somebody, because I ran into an elder at the grocery store, like a couple months, I don't know, like 3 or 4 months after, I think it was. He's like, hey, how you been? I'm like, oh man. The good thing was I was going into the grocery store while he was going out, so I'm like, oh, how you doing? I gotta run. It's like, kind of like, I gotta
Yeah.
Yeah.
make
You're
this
trying
grocery
to keep it
hurry.
quick.
Yeah, I guess real quick, how you doing? So I can tell he wanted to talk to me, and then well, a funny one was about a year after that, I'm in traffic on the way to work, and then the next car over to me was an elder from our hall, and he pulls up next to me. He tries rolling down his window. I can see it. I'm looking. I have pretty good peripheral vision, so I can see out, like, out the side of my head. And I'm like, I know there's somebody waving at me. I know he wants to talk to me. Who is it? I'm like, oh man. So I looked over. I'm like, yep, that's who I thought it was. It was him. I'm like, I didn't roll my window down. I was like, hey, this wave, kind of wave. Hey, how you doing? And then fortunately, the light turned green and I took off. I didn't never roll my window down. He rolled his down, expecting me to roll mine down, but it wasn't gonna.
I've never
Nope.
been so happy for a green light.
Yeah, it would have been like a great Poupon moment there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I kept on going, and that's the last time I've seen an elder from our hall, and we've had them stop by our house a couple times, and thank goodness for a Ring doorbell because I knew it was them, and didn't answer
Those
the
things are
door.
great.
Oh yeah, they're wonderful.
Yeah.
So I haven't actually had to talk to them, but I imagine eventually I'm gonna rent them again, and I know what I'm gonna say if I do, but yeah, it's it's I can't tell you how many times I've thought of mailing my disassociation letter, but I haven't done it. Got it all written, but I haven't mailed it. I really want to because I don't like the fact they still kind of have me. I don't
Right.
I don't want to be part of them, but I also don't want to cave to you know the repercussions that I know will follow, because it'll make its rounds. You know.
So it's just to preserve the link with your family.
Yeah, with my family. Yeah,
Yeah.
I have a decent amount of family still in. So my wife's family is pretty much all in. Um, she's got like multiple generations and cousins and whatnot, and so They know we're inactive and not going back, and but they don't know anything other than that. They don't know that our opinions on everything. So yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, I've gone back and forth myself, and I've heard the debate online on the XJW subreddit. Do you write a letter or not?
Mm-hmm.
And I know many people very, very understandably went, okay, I'm going to write my letter. I want to draw the line in the sand. And it's obviously a very personal decision, but I landed on that I didn't care because I didn't care. And I started thinking about it when an elder asked me to write a letter.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, for what spilled out of my mouth was, I don't care what the Mormon church thinks of me. It's not an important organization. I felt like for me, I mean, this is completely somebody else, maybe a different thing. It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
For me, they're just so unimportant to me now.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter that it doesn't matter what that anybody else thinks of me either. I don't care about what the opinion of the cashier. I want to get along with everybody. The cashier at the grocery store, I don't care about that either. But I got to that point where I just didn't care, and that stupid joke. It's a moo point. The cow's opinion. Nobody cares.
That's a thing. It's fair.
It doesn't matter for me.
Yeah.
But then
Yeah.
I also understand the point of view of line in the sand for and for just some sort of like ethics. I don't want to be associated with this vile organization. I get that
Right.
too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I know. My wife's family keeps trying to get us to go back to the hall, and my dad keeps saying you could come back to Jehovah. I completely confused him one day because he goes you guys you should really just come back to Jehovah. It's not too late. And I said, Dad, all right, so do you agree that God is everywhere all the time? He's like, what do you mean? So you really think God exists inside of a building? Does it matter whether I'm there or I'm outside or anywhere else? How can you leave God? That's like saying, don't leave the planet. Well, I can't. I don't have a spaceship. It's like, I can't leave.
Yeah, but to them, they're
Oh, I know. Yeah,
one, you know.
I know. And it's funny how they don't realize that they are saying that God and the organization are one, because you can leave a location, but you can't leave the eternal being who's everywhere. How can you do that? So what you're saying when you're saying come back to Jehovah is come back to the kingdom hall, but they never put that
Right.
together.
Come back
I
to our approval is what they're saying.
Yeah, oh yeah, exactly. But you know, when I was in, when somebody said come back to Jehovah, I thought, if I leave, he's abandoning me and he's not around me. It's like that's stupid. It's really stupid. The whole concept is so dumb. Just to have the arrogance to say, "Oh, we control God. He's inside of our building." So you could keep him inside.
Right.
It's like there's even a verse about that. I can't remember. There's a verse about containing God inside of a building. I forgot what it is. I'm not gonna go there though. We're not doing Bible verses tonight.
But it's still all wrapped in so much false humility. We're so
Yeah,
humble, but you can only get to God through our organization.
right, exactly. It is. There's so much arrogance to all of the rules and the laws and the policies and you know organization this and organization that. And then one thing that really blew my mind was when I realized that the term governing body is used in other corporations. I remember listening to the financial report on it was like CNBC or something, and they mentioned the governing body of some, I forget what company it was. I'm like, wait a minute, other companies have a governing body. That's not a term that was exclusive to Jehovah's.
Right.
I didn't know that. And that was very interesting to learn that. Like, oh, okay, it's the corporate term. Okay, so add that to manager, district manager,
Yeah.
and all those others. Yep. So, it,
That's crazy.
yeah.
Well, I
So
think
now that
Fallon.
you're
Oh,
on
sorry.
the
Go ahead.
outside and I
Oh,
was just gonna say, now that you're, just finding this new freedom
Mhm.
and, you seem like you're doing well, adjusting well over the last few years.
Yeah.
If you could go back and tell Dave from back then, one thing, what do you think it would be? Or if you had something to share with people that are on the fence or considering leaving, that you wish someone would have shared with you, what do you think it is?
Oh, honestly, if it was me talking to myself back then, um, it would be appreciate people while they're around, because there are a whole bunch of people that, in my mind, because I thought, we're gonna walk right into paradise. Nobody's ever gonna really die, and if they do, they're gonna get brought right back. There are a number of people that I didn't appreciate while they were here, at least not fully,
Sure.
because when you think that, you know, paradise is around the corner, I'm not gonna ever kick the bucket, and neither are they. And if they do, they're gonna pop right back out of the ground next to their tombstone. um, I did not appreciate certain people, and I kind of wish I had. I think that would be what I'd say, is just kind of take a look around and take in life more than you have been, because now I'm not old, but I'm not 20 something anymore either. And there are
Right.
things that I wish I had done when I was younger, that I had the energy and the time to do, that now I just can't. You know, I regret that. Not that I can change it, but I would definitely tell myself to appreciate life more and appreciate people more, um, because they're not around forever.
Yeah. So just kind of a like a self inventory, your connections with other people, how you invest yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think I was, at one point in my life, I was definitely too focused on, I don't know, I guess, all things that are relevant now. That's for sure. Um, just wasted so much time on stuff that was unnecessary, and I just can't get that time back. None of us can. So
Right.
yeah.
That's
Hopefully that's
excellent advice.
questions.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing just your experience and your story. I'm sure so many parts of it I related to. I'm sure Jason did as well. I'm sure, the people that are watching or listening um, will be able to pick something out of it that, they can connect with.
Yeah. No, I
That
thank you
would
for having
be
me on.
encouraging for them to let them know, the experience is not singular. Um, it's a shared experience, and that if you're in a dark place, or if you're on the fence or just having a tough time, there are people that have gone through that experience and come out successfully on the other side.
Yeah. Well, if I could say one more thing, um, if there is anybody listening who's just recently left, and yeah, they're in an awful place because they think that their life as they knew it's over. Because I'm sure there are people that get disfellowship, disassociated, that think that this is the end of everything and my life is going to melt and fall apart. And um, yeah, please just reach out to. I mean, there's so many ex witnesses out there that are willing to help you. Like you said, um, and there is a life outside the organization, a better life, way better. Don't ever believe that garbage about that. Witnesses are the best life ever. That's the biggest lie you'll ever hear. The real life is once you leave and you can actually control what you do every day, and you can make your own decisions, and you don't have to follow what a man tells you to do. You can actually follow your conscience. You can make your own decisions, and you can have a happier, way happier life when you actually know who you are, what you want to do. Um, and don't ever think that your life's over. Your life's beginning. Um, you know, it's like a new birth. Like your brand new chance to do things that you really wanted to do and you didn't know you wanted to do, and learn things you want to learn. Learn everything, as I say. Learn as much as you can about everything around you, because life's short, and it's not what you thought it was, but it's good though. It's good, and people are mostly good on the outside, not evil, and a bunch of crazy people like they showed you on the pages of the Watchtower. They're actually really good people out